Welcome to my Bake Escape. I've got a delicious, super simple fall recipe for you using store-bought puff pastry, cream cheese, and pumpkin puree. You mix all these together and you get these delicious pumpkin cream cheese Danish. For the full recipe, visit mybakeescape.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Pinterest at mybakeescape. And be sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate the support. So for this recipe, you will need a few ingredients, including pumpkin puree and the store-bought puff pastry. You will also need eggs, brown sugar, vanilla extract, and a variety of spices. You will need some puff pastry sheets. You can pick these up at a grocery store in the freezer section. And you will also need some delicious spices like cinnamon, ground ginger, nutmeg, and cloves. I start by combining the pumpkin filling. So for this, I use pumpkin puree and I add 1 egg. Go ahead and combine the egg with the pumpkin puree. Then I add in the brown sugar, adds a little bit of sweetness to this filling. Once the brown sugar has been added, I go ahead and add all of the spices. So for this, I'm using a little bit of salt, ground ginger, ground nutmeg, ground cloves, and ground cinnamon. And you can see that all of those spices gave this pumpkin filling a darker shade. And I add in the vanilla extract and mix that in. And that's the pumpkin filling. So I set that to the side and I work on the cream cheese filling. So for that, you will need a block of cream cheese, granulated sugar, and vanilla extract. It's important that the cream cheese is room temperature. So this has been sitting on the counter for about an hour. And as you can see, I can mash it by hand and mix it together. That is the right consistency. So I use my hand mixer to cream this cream cheese until it is light and fluffy. Then I incorporate the granulated sugar and I cream these together until the sugar has been mixed into that cream cheese. And then I add in the vanilla extract and mix until everything is combined and it is nice and smooth and creamy. Now that the fillings are done, I go ahead and preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And while the oven is preheated, I work on the puff pastry. So as I mentioned earlier, you can find this in the freezer section of most grocery stores. I believe I picked this up at Target. To thaw out, make sure to follow the instructions on the box. You can do it pretty quickly by popping it in the microwave, but I actually pulled these out the day before and placed the whole box in the refrigerator. But in case you didn't plan ahead like I did and you want to make these and they're still frozen, you do have some options that are listed on the box to thaw these out a lot faster. So I go ahead and lightly flour my work surface and unfold the puff pastry, being very gentle. I remove the parchment sheets that are between the folds. And then using a rolling pin, I just gently roll out the dough a little bit just to kind of flatten out those creases in a nice, even, flat shape. And then using a pizza cutter, I go ahead and cut out 6 pieces so that this one sheet will make 6 Danish. Try to be a little bit more careful when you cut these, make them a little more evenly than I did, but I added these to a parchment lined cookie sheet and I kind of spread them out so they don't touch, and I noticed that some of them were larger than the others, so I just trimmed some of them so that they were more even in size and shape. And then I take a small knife and I carefully score a border about 1/2 inch from the edge of each rectangle, being careful not to cut all the way through. You're just gently adding this edge, and this will make it easy so that you can fill the Danish and keep all the filling inside of this border, and it will allow the edges to just puff up and bake perfectly golden brown and ensure that that filling stays inside of the Danish. And then I take a fork and I gently poke holes all on the inside of that Danish. This will help the dough bake even and avoid those bubbles from forming while it's baking in the oven. So poking holes will help this process keep that filling inside of the Danish. Now that the pastry dough has been prepped, it's time to fill with our delicious fillings. So I start by adding about a tablespoon of that cream cheese filling, and I spread it just along the inside edge of that border that I created. I used an offset spatula. It helped to spread that out a little bit more smooth and evenly. But you can use a butter knife or the back of a spoon. Whatever tool you have would be just fine. Once the cream cheese has been added, I go ahead and top with about a tablespoon of that pumpkin filling. And already this smells amazing. You can smell all the spices mixed with that pumpkin. Once the filling has been added, I went ahead and evenly spread these out on the pan, and then I made an egg wash. An egg wash consists of 1 egg and about a tablespoon of water that I beat together until nice and smooth. And then I use a silicone pastry brush to brush this egg wash just on the exposed edge of the puff pastry. This is going to give the pastry a nice golden brown finish once they've baked in the oven. And as an added touch, this is a bonus, you don't have to do this, but I do like to sprinkle a little bit of granulated sugar on top of that egg wash. It just kind of gives it a shiny finish after it's baked. So these are going to bake in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 15 minutes. Just keep an eye on them. You want to bake them until they are nice and golden brown and that center is completely set. Once they've baked, remove them from the oven and place the entire sheet on a cooling rack and let them cool down. Look at how beautiful these turned out, and they smell incredible. While the Danish cool, I went ahead and worked on the icing. For the icing, you will need powdered sugar, salt, milk, and vanilla extract. To the powdered sugar, I add a pinch of salt, followed by some vanilla extract. And I just add a little bit of milk at a time until I achieve the consistency that I want. And for this, I want a nice thick drizzle consistency. So if you feel like it's a little too thick after you add it in and mix in all the ingredients, you can add a little bit of milk at a time. If you overdo it and add too much milk, you can add a little bit more powdered sugar to help thicken it up. And this is the consistency I was looking for. So once the glaze is done, it's time to drizzle on top of the Danish. So you can use the whisk or a fork or a spoon, and you just want to drizzle a nice amount of this delicious vanilla glaze on top of each Danish. This is going to add just a little bit more flavor and sweetness, and together the flavors are just so delicious. Let these sit for a few minutes while the icing sets, and then enjoy. I just like the overall look of these. They baked perfectly. They're golden brown on the bottom. These smell incredible and I cannot wait to taste. The pastry is baked perfectly golden brown. Those layers of buttery, flaky crust with the cream cheese and pumpkin and spice. Oh, these are so delicious. These are wonderful for breakfast. You can actually make them in the morning and enjoy them. If you wanted to, you can top these with a scoop of vanilla ice cream and enjoy them as a dessert. You can use this recipe and fill them with whatever you like. You can do the cream cheese on its own. You can add like a cherry pie filling. You can cook down some cinnamon spiced apples and add that. I mean, the options are limitless. I absolutely love the way that these turned out. They're so delicious. So while these were baking, I did make another 6 pastries because you get 2 sheets of that puff pastry. And I will show you what I'm going to do with those later. But for now, I want to let you know that you can store these baked Danishes in an airtight container for about 3 days in the refrigerator, and to reheat and enjoy, you can place them in the oven for a few minutes, in an air fryer for a few minutes, or even in the microwave for a few seconds just to warm it up slightly, and they are delicious. As I mentioned earlier, I did make another 6 of these Danishes, and I placed the whole tray in the freezer and let them freeze for about 45 minutes until they're nice and solid and frozen, and that filling is frozen as well. And then I placed them in a Ziploc bag. I place 1 layer and then I top that with a piece of parchment paper and then place the rest on top of that parchment paper. And then I add another piece of parchment paper to the top just so that the filling doesn't stick to the plastic. And I place these in the freezer, and they can last in the freezer for about 30 days. And to enjoy, you just remove them from the freezer, place them on a cookie sheet, let them sit on your counter for about an hour, and then bake them off. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think that these turned out delicious, and I hope that you make them very soon. And if you do, let me know in the comments what you think of this recipe. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments as well, and make sure to visit mybakeescape.com for the full recipe. Thanks for watching, and have a sweet day.